Hello! 2 chapters today, and that would be Malfoy Manor and the Wand Maker. It's been a busy day. I've had to socialize, I've had to deal with mental breakdown, and then I had to read those 2 chapters. So I think today I want to talk about Mercy and Mourning, because we have, I think, 2, notably, of the oddest moments of mercy in at least this book alone, if not the entire series. And in the same chapter, and actually going sort of carrying on together, I think there's a really obvious one, which is Peter Pettigrew. Because Peter has this moment of hesitation where he is willing to show mercy to Harry. And he's not even aware of it. Hardly even aware of it. But I think we have to keep in mind that Peter Pettigrew was in fact a Gryffindor. And one of the Marauders. Oftentimes we paint him, particularly again with Remus and Sirius reflecting on him, we have a tendency to paint him as the follower and as sort of the person that they took pity on and let them follow them around. But the thing is, Remus might have done that simply because he wanted to have friends. But Sirius and James, from what we've seen of their past, don't seem the type of person to just let a hanger-on hang out without having some sort of reason for it. Something about Peter that they said yes, and he passes. You have to keep in mind, too, that Peter also made the Animagus transformation, which says, again, that Peter was powerful enough at the age of, 15? They made it in 5th year? To actually achieve that. And knew how to use being a rat animagus. And knew how to fake Sirius out. Like, we are seeing some aspects that we have to keep in mind with Peter. We can't just say he's sort of the hanger-on when he's proved to be one of the Marauders that's actually lasted the longest. But we have this moment then with this silver hand where it actually comes back on him. And that seems to be in his, perhaps in one of his most courageous moments, being willing to show mercy to an enemy who is attacking you. Like, Harry and Ron have tackled this man and are struggling with him. To be willing to show mercy in that moment with the recognition that it's not liable to be returned on you. That's a very courageous moment. And that's sort of the interesting thing, is that despite his cowardly nature, everybody else wrote him off. But Voldemort didn't. Voldemort looked at somebody like Peter Pettigrew and didn't just see the coward. He saw the possibility for some real courage there in a much more positive light. Not a courage to become one of the Death Eaters, but a courage to show mercy. And something I think even Voldemort, in his inability to achieve that, both envied and wanted to squash. And he did that through the Silver Hand. That hand was designed to kill Peter if he ever had a moment where he showed mercy. And I find that an interesting sort of parallel, because we recently did have the flashback with Voldemort at the Potters, and Voldemort's own attempt to show mercy, or what he deemed as mercy, which was telling Lily to get out of the way. And even in that moment, his patience didn't hang out. Like, I think he told her like 3 times, get out of the way, and then was like, screw it. And his inability to recognize that that wouldn't have been mercy. That would have just been death in a different way. So he squashed it in Peter immediately, because that wasn't even a big sign of mercy. That was a very small sign. But Peter showed it. And I think that should be how we remember Peter. Even before the silver hand turned on him. I think that one moment of hesitation. Because we haven't seen that with a lot of other people. We're starting to see it with the Malfoys, because Draco won't even look at these kids. And I mean, like, Hermione's maybe a little ruffled from roughing it, but she'd certainly be somebody he could identify. Harry's face is swollen up, and Ron's taken at least 1 punch to the face, so maybe those, sure. But Draco isn't even willing to directly rat out Hermione. So we are starting to see these moments of mercy towards these characters. But the interesting one, and sort of the parallel that you're seeing prior to Wormtail, and in a lot of ways I think Peter's moment of mercy overshadows it. But Harry, of course, is fighting to stay focused and not to let himself get pulled into Voldemort's head, which is really the first time we're seeing him trying to consciously reject it. And we'll see that grief helps him do that better, though again, he can't entirely cut himself off. But he has these moments where he's seeing into Grindelwald's prison cell. And I'm going to read one of the quick little visions he has. Of course, Greyback's staggering them down into the prison. So Hermione's been pulled apart. They're getting pulled down. They haven't met anybody else yet. And Harry has this vision. The emaciated figure stirred beneath its thin blanket and rolled over towards him, eyes opening in a skull of a face. The frail man sat up, great sunken eyes fixed upon him, upon Voldemort, and then he smiled. Most of his teeth were gone. So you have come. I thought you would, one day. But your journey was pointless. I never had it. That last sentence of I never had it was Grindelwald's mercy to Dumbledore's body. Because from everything we've seen of Grindelwald, as little as it seems to be, he certainly was the more flamboyant type. He wanted people to know he was there and that he's done things. That's why he carved the symbol of the Deathly Hallows into Durmstrang walls. He wanted people to remember him as this great and terrible person. And then he lies to Voldemort's face. Why, it doesn't matter. You know Voldemort's gonna kill you now. Well, because Dumbledore was his friend for as short a time as that might have been, and did any additional feelings that might have been there. For 2 months, Dumbledore was his greatest friend. And he tried to show mercy to Dumbledore's body by claiming he never had that wand. Because the obvious place to go then is the person that defeated Grindelwald, which is Dumbledore. So by saying, I never had it, my heart caught in my throat. Because it shows that even at really dark times, even really terrible people can do something immensely selfless. And whether or not that's Peter loosening his grip on Harry's neck, or if that's Grindelwald lying about his greatness, that is something that we should keep in mind. Especially in these 2 chapters, because these 2 chapters are just... like, we watch Peter get strangled by his own hand. His own sacrifice to the Dark Lord turning back on him. We're seeing just how terrified the Malfoys are. I mean, Hermione gets tortured, and that's... we don't see it, but we hear it, and just watching Ron and Harry in a panic. And then Dobby dies, and that's Harry's sign of mercy. Mercy to himself, I think, in a big way. To let it all go for her. Even that evening. And not even that entire evening. Because right afterwards, he turns around and says, okay. But when he digs Dobby's grave by hand, that is not just a sign of respect to Dobby, though it certainly is. It is a sign of mercy to Harry himself that says, I am going to feel this right now. I'll have to set it aside and stop feeling it very soon. But right now I need to feel this. And I need to feel it deeply, and I need to feel it on my hands, and then in my magic, and in my heart. And then it needs to solidify there. Because the last thing that any of these sacrifices can be is worthless. The last thing that any of this can be was not important. Every single one of these choices needs to mean something. And that's the choice then Harry makes when he chooses to speak to Griphook first. As he looks at it and says, the Hallows might help me, but the destruction of the Horcruxes is going to help everybody in this house. And everybody else that we're terrified of losing. Everybody trapped in Azkaban right now, everyone, even in the Death Eaters themselves, that are realizing now they have made a mistake and they don't want to be there. Harry makes the choice to feel very deeply and then to let it go. To let go of that hurt, to let go of that fear, to let go of that connection with Voldemort as much as he can, and to let go with his obsession of beating death. Because that's what he's recognizing in this moment, is how can I ask that I survive when all of these other people aren't, and all of these other people are giving so much more. Because that's what he's seeing, is all these people make choices and try to change and try to do different things. And that's the important bit, isn't it? The important bit aren't the dates on the headstone. The important bits are the dash in between. Which is why Harry doesn't write the date on Dobby's headstone, because that's not important. The fact that he was free elf, that was important. And that's what needed to be remembered. Because in this life, all the wizards are free. Except when we are stopped by our own fear and anger and hatred. And then we get trapped. And we get trapped by the fear and anger and hatred of others. And every now and then, maybe we should just be happy with a pair of socks, like Dobby was. Maybe that's why Dumbledore said he saw socks in the Mirror of Erised. Because when everything else is gone, you wished you had appreciated the small things more. But that's how mercy and mourning work. They hurt really deeply. And then you let it go. I'm gonna keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.